What we have here is the very first look at one of the most anticipated box sets of 2017. This is the third in a series of David Bowie boxes that Parlophone are putting out, and this covers the years 1977 to 1982, and the box is called A New Career in a New Town. And one of the reasons this is so anticipated is because it contains the albums Low, Heroes and Lodger, which are known as, rather inaccurately, as the Berlin Trilogy. Those albums were worked on in collaboration with Brian Eno, and Tony Visconti produced them. But this set doesn't just limit itself to that. It includes the live album stage from 1978, and there's two versions of that actually. There's the original version that came out on CD, and then there was a more recent remixed edition. Lodger, incidentally, exists twice in this box set. Tony Visconti has done a full remix of the album for 2017. And the other full record is Scary Monsters, which isn't considered part of the Berlin Trilogy. There was no Brian Eno, but it was produced by Tony Visconti, and it's sort of widely regarded as closing the book on the classic era of 1970s Bowie. The reason this goes up to 1982 is because it contains a third disc of rarities in the Recall series. So this is Recall 3. The previous box had Recall 2. The first box had Recall 1, of course. It includes songs that go up to 1982, such as the soundtrack version of Cat People, which was remade for Let's Dance. The UK number 1, Under Pressure, which was a collaboration with Queen, of course. And various other bits and pieces which we'll look at in a minute. The first thing to say is this has quite a matte finish to it. The gloss of last year's Who Can I Be Now set isn't present. The actual construction of the box is very much the same, so it has the inner drawer which slides out like that, and then inside are all the various albums. So you won't be surprised to hear that Parlophone have stuck to the same kind of format. So each album is presented in a mini LP CD vinyl replica version of the original UK album. So what that means is the CDs effectively look like mini vinyl records, and you'll see what I'm saying in a second. So let's go through the albums. I'm going to tip these out here. So I'm going to start off with 1977's Low. This was actually started in France, this record, so it's not a pure Berlin album. They've done a good job with the cover. It maybe not quite as bright as I've seen some replications of the artwork, but it looks good. And the key thing is they've replicated the original sticker on the back. That's how the original vinyl record came. The track listing wasn't printed on, it was actually put on a sticker which was stuck on the rear of the album. So Parlophone have made sure to replicate that. And they've done a delightful job in here actually. So there's the CD. This is consistent throughout. Where it once said RCA on the old record labels, it now says Bowie. That's quite familiar, and that's how they've done the previous ones. But what's great about this is the sort of the detail. So you have an original plain white inner sleeve, and then not only do you get the sheet which has credits on it and tells you who plays on what song, again an absolute replica of the original. You even get this brilliant little David Bowie fan club booklet. So back in the day you would have filled in your name and address, sent off however much it cost to join. You can see there it says keep up with David's changes. So I mean, that's the kind of level of detail we're talking about. So these all slot into here. These are like the Japanese ones really. There's not much between them. So these are larger than the kind of ones that you see in the classic album boxes. And they have spines, they all have spines. So that's Low. So the next album Bowie released was Heroes. So this was David's second album of 1977, because of course Low came out earlier on in the year, so it's pretty impressive output in 1 year. The front cover replication here is good. To me it looks a little bit dark. Just for comparison, I dug out my Japanese vinyl replica CD that came out in about 2007. So I'm just going to hold that on the left here and compare it to the current one. As you can see, the one on the right, the new, is slightly darker. The whites aren't quite as white. And it's more noticeable on the back actually, where the grey is quite dark. I'm more used to this lighter grey. It's a very minor point, but I think I prefer the one on the left, which isn't the new one. But again, sort of nitpicking a little bit. If you actually notice at the top there, they've got the sort of code for this new CD issue, DBX32. Now, I'm not quite sure why that's there. Maybe on the original UK pressing of the vinyl there was something there. Certainly wasn't on the Japanese edition. So that's a little difference there. I know these are all minutiae, but collectors, that's why they buy these things, because they like that kind of attention to detail. So I think it's valid to bring it up. And the other thing to notice is that these have all got Parlophone logos all over them, which I actually think spoiled some of the earlier albums, but I think it's less prominent on these records, so it's not so much of a big deal. So again, with Heroes, you get a new version of the David Bowie fan club booklet. Lovely attention to detail. The lyric sheet is recreated. It's very interesting looking at this. You realise how few lyrics there are to The Secret Life of Arabia, which is the brilliant album closer. So same kind of design on the CD, a slightly different design actually for the inner sleeve, so presumably that replicates whatever was used at the time. So that's Heroes. It's all good stuff so far. Now, in an interesting move, they've chosen to recreate, Parlophone have chosen to recreate this Heroes EP. So this is a kind of combination of French and German versions of Heroes, which David Bowie did record at the time. There's not much to this because it's really only a single EP, but you can see there that it has effectively two pairs of versions. So it has the album and single versions of the German version of Heroes, and the same thing applies to the French versions. So it's a nice touch that they did this. It just gives you a little bit of something extra for your money. I like the design of this. I'm pretty sure this replicates something from back in the day. Now, between album number 2 in the so-called Berlin trilogy and album number 3, so that is Heroes and Lodger, Bowie released a live album, Stage. This is replicated here. Original gatefold replicated. It's the same picture as they used on the cover in the gatefold. And this version is the original CD mix. So for Stage, you get the 2 CDs, you get the gatefold wallet, and then you get 2 replica inner sleeves. But you also do get the return of the fan club booklet. So echoing previous boxes where David Live was repeated twice, there's 2 versions of Stage, and this is the Tony Visconti remix of Stage, if you like. You can see here it says 2017 edition. Now that is a sticker, so you should be able to remove that because it looks a bit weird there. But the artwork here reflects the remixed reissue of Stage, which came out sometime in the noughties. It might have been 2005 or 2006, I can't remember. So they've maintained the same front cover, but they've got a different gatefold. And interestingly, there's no attempt here to present this as vinyl over 4 sides. They just say they've just got 2 listings for CD1 and CD2. One of the things that was different about this was they reordered the tracks, and they were actually in the order that they were played at the time. Whereas the original issue of Stage, they mixed them up, and they started with the earlier tracks and ended with the later tracks. That was the thinking. So they did it chronologically originally, which didn't match the performance on the night. So one of the attempts to be more authentic was to actually match the performance on the night, which is ending with tracks like Station to Station, Stay, and TBC 15. So you get a couple of printed inner sleeves here, 2 CDs. Yeah, I haven't mentioned this so far, but these are all gold CDs, which someone was saying was to do with counterfeit CDs and trying to prevent counterfeit. So that's worth highlighting. Now then, Lodger. David Bowie's least known album, perhaps. I don't know. It's probably the one with the lowest profile in the 1970s. This was the 3rd in the so-called Berlin trilogy. It's very weird, this cover, because it's a bit topsy-turvy. So the bit that says Lodger and David Bowie is actually the back. That's the front. So if you're holding it like that, That's how it would have been originally. And then you open it up. Parlophone have put their logo here at the bottom, and there's some small print there. Now none of that exists on the Japanese mini LP CD. So to compare, on the left here you've got the one issued in Japan 10 years ago, 2007, and on the right is the new one from the box set. Now as you can see, there's nothing here, which I think is the more accurate version. I'm not sure, to be honest, but whatever way you look at it, it's slightly disconcerting. Again, I'm being very fussy here, but it's always worth comparing these things. The back is basically identical. The new ones has a bit more, the white is slightly whiter, where it has a bit more of a bluey kind of tint on the old one. So this is nicely done again. So inner sleeve, CD, and this is an original lyric sheet. So again, that would have been in the album. It has a bit of a photo montage thing going on there. Now I was wondering, because there's two versions of Lodger in this box set. There's the new Tony Visconti remix, and I was curious about how they'd present that. I'm going to show you that now. That's Lodger. So here's the 2017 version of Lodger. So they've kind of done a back to front topsy-turvy thing. They've used existing images. That's a very scary picture of Bowie. I can see why that wasn't used on the album at the time. I think this might have been used for various posters and promotional images at the time. But anyway, it's the same kind of thing inside, and again it's an even scarier picture of Bowie. God, it looks terrible. They have gone to the effort to recreate the lyric sheet again, which you can see there, and an inner sleeve. And there's the new 2017 remix. So it's clearly labelled as the remix. I'm looking forward to listening to that. Now, a beautiful record and beautiful artwork. This is Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. I love this album. I think it's just as good, every bit as good as anything from the so-called Berlin trilogy. You get a replication of the original booklet. An inner sleeve, and the artwork there is in black on the CD, as you can see. And the final disc in this box set is Recall 3. Now this is very nice and glossy. I love the green. It's actually a fantastic compilation. This is probably one of the best that they've done, because you get a single version of Heroes, you get an extended version of Beauty and the Beast, which was very rare. There's an Australian single version of Breaking Glass from Low, various single versions of other singles like DJ. The kind of not that well known 1979 version of Space Oddity, which Bowie put on the B-side of Alabama Song, I think, which also features on here. I think it's kind of known as the Kenny Everett version, because it was either exactly the same or similar to the version that he played on the Kenny Everett show in 1979 or 1980. The other thing on here is you get the Baal EP, Bertolt Brecht's Baal, which was a standalone EP. I think it was the last thing Bowie released on RCA, actually. Now, I think it's a real shame they didn't release that, like the Heroes, as an actual physical EP. It's just become part of this set. But it's still a welcome inclusion, because there's a couple of songs here which have never been on CD before. And it finishes off with a few random singles, including the Peace on Earth, Bing Crosby duet, and Cat People, which was from the soundtrack of the film Cat People, and that was released as a standalone single. Bowie, as I said earlier, Bowie later re-recorded it, speeded it up and re-recorded it for Let's Dance. And here's the book. Now this is nice. This is really, really solid hardback book. There's a lot of content in here, a lot of beautiful photographs. It's pretty stunning, to be honest with you. Labels, covers. That's a Rolling Stone review of scary monsters, essays, recreations of things. It's a really, really interesting period, this, of David Bowie's career and his life. So they look like they've done a fantastic job. I haven't read any of this yet. I've literally got this just very recently. But something from Tony Visconti here about Low. And various essays written by different people. So that's the book. So there we have it. There's 5 albums in this box set across 11 CDs. 2 albums repeated. They are Stage and Lodger. And of course you have the bonus disc at the end. So that's 11 CDs plus a book. All exquisitely presented and slotting into this inner drawer, which then slots back in here. So I'm going to be looking at the vinyl box separately shortly in the next few days. But for now, thanks for watching. This is Paul Sinclair from Super Deluxe Edition, taking a first look at the David Bowie A New Career in a New Town box set.